Welcome to Voices of Hyperspace. This is a show where friends get together and discuss all things sci-fi. Our current mission is to watch, review, and absolutely nerd all over the hit 90s TV show Babylon 5. I'm Legendary Black Lion.
I'm Captain Melisila.
Hey y'all, this is Sunday.
And today we're going to be taking a look at episode 5 of season 3 entitled Voices of Authority. I thought this was a really cool episode to look at because a lot of things that have been hinted at in the background are just blatantly being thrown in your face. We are watching how Earth government is overstepping their authority, and where they're using a lot of the different principles that are used in authoritarian and fascist governments. While that happens, we're looking at how our characters are relating to power in the episode. So there are the divisions between Garibaldi and his security team. We get to see how Zach is treated throughout the whole episode. I know I joke about Zach being a dumb guy, but boy, they treat him terrible in this episode.
I feel sad for him because Zach is he's not like the brightest crayon in the box, and he is being exploited definitely on the Earth Force side of things, but he also is not given the tools that he needs on the Garibaldi side of things. But Garibaldi is very good at not providing tools to people. And so it puts Zach in a very difficult position because he doesn't have the intellect to lead himself. And so he ends up stuck between a rock and a hard place.
And it's easy for him because, like we said, he's not very bright. So the shiny things attract him, like 50 credits. And now with 50 credits, they can now control his life and what he does, how he sees other people, and how he goes about seeing other people. I mentioned Garibaldi being stupid too, but
oh yeah,
that's normal too.
I mean, Zach is so lucky that he has Garibaldi as his boss.
And I mean, this is going ahead a little bit, but we're not doing that anymore. So, him questioning the code, it's like, why couldn't you just say it was for command staff? Oh, it's only command staff using it. It's out of his pay grade. Like, that's all you had to say. Well, you wanted to get smart with the man for questioning you. Now everybody's getting smart with him for questioning them.
What our powers and authority at?
There's also Zach's past dealings. One, he signed up willingly for Night Watch just for the money. Now we have Zach in a questionable position because he's the snitch of the station, and they're like, we don't want you around. And he did it to himself. In this episode, he doesn't straight up say it, but he's kind of threatening, like, what you got to hide? I'm a snitch on you. So, of course, with everything they got going on, they want to keep him as far away as possible. He does kind of have a desire to connect with people, and he's struggling with that. At the beginning, him and Garibaldi are having kind of a more, I mean, you know, it's not a professional discussion, but he's being like candid with them, like, why we got to do these meetings, these regulations kind of suck. My uniform doesn't fit right. I don't feel comfortable. That's actually kind of casual with your commanding officer. And with Zach feeling so comfortable to share everything that he doesn't like, there had to have been development of some sort of more than professional relationship there.
Well, like Garibaldi's always like, those are my men and I know them and I trust them. And he doesn't trust anyone he doesn't know. So he feels like he knows them. He's got to be buddy with everybody. Like he came to the station because he was friends with the first commander. And I thought that conversation kind of really described his insecurities. Like he has insecurities. They might be something that we would dismiss, but that is having strong insecurities and them overpowering everything else about your personality is how someone like the Night Watch can come over and say,
yes,
you don't have to be insecure because we're going to give you this tiny bit of power. And if you're insecure, we give them that tiny bit of power and all of a sudden that's your that's the hope you have for some confidence, and you hold on to that, which is what we see in real life when we question how do people do things that is stupid, is because they are insecure about themselves, and having that tiny bit of power over someone else, regardless of the logic in it, is what drives that superiority, that hatred, whether it's race or sex or gender identity. Them being told that fantasy that you have power over them because society's going to see you as superior is what they cling to in order to hide from the pain of not having any self-esteem at all.
Yeah. So I wanted to connect this to another show that I think does a very good job on kind of like really getting to the details of it. There is this show that we definitely should take a look at together. It's called Endor. It is the only Star Wars property that I'm excited about because it actually shows you what evil the Empire does. And interestingly enough, a lot of what happens surrounds the security company, and there's one guy's unwillingness to let something kind of innocuous go away. These two company men get killed by Endor, but during the investigation, the security leader, or like the company leader, is like, look, these guys were at a brothel that we don't allow. They were drinking alcohol that they're not supposed to have. They're spending money that they're not supposed to have. They're in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing, and they messed with the wrong guy and got themselves killed. Mm-hmm. It's their fault, and that's literally what it is. But the other guy, he feels like he needs to do something for his own self-esteem, but he also is pushing the company line and the imperial line. And because of his incompetence and lack of self-esteem, which does get highlighted in a horrible speech to his security company, it gets 6 people killed. It gets his commanding officer fired, and it gets an entire planet taken over by the Empire. And he's told, congratulations, your incompetence did this. And
oh wow.
Yeah. And at the end of it, he's still not satisfied. He's like, no, I have to do, quote unquote, the right thing. He's stuck on his personal ego being attached to what the Empire is, and he's trying to do that. So basically, Garibaldi blows off Zach for this war council. What it is a code 7R. Zach is like, I never heard of that before. And Zach is like, yeah, forget about it. Don't worry about it. Which, whenever somebody says, don't think about it, it's like, oh, I need to really think about this thing. You know, for someone who knows how people get away with stuff, Garibaldi is terrible.
Yeah.
During the war council, Delenn is extremely competent. She's talking about the old ones and like how they were in the last war, and just kind of like everything, pretty much everything about them. And it's like the Minbari had this knowledge the entire time, and now she's finally sharing it. And once they talk about like, hey, we need to be prepared for this war, Sheridan is eager to seek the help of the older ones. And Marcus is like, I don't know about all of that, because I trained with the Minbari, and they were like, stay away from the old ones because they might destroy you without even knowing that they did so. So that's showing how powerful they are.
We're those ants.
Yes. Right?
That Jakar mentioned before. Yeah.
And they're all wondering how can they, if they're going to get the first one's help, how are they going to contact them? And Delenn says, oh, well, we've thought about that. And so she introduces Drall to the War Council, which, I mean, that has been a really cool thing. But Drall is starting to become the literal god in the machine now. I don't hate it, but it's just it's just kind of weird how it comes across.
Yeah.
Also, he's still doing that theatrical acting, and it's, on the one hand, it's cool, but man, his voice is just belting.
He's out of place a little bit, but I mean, it makes sense for him to be out of place. But at the same time, it's like okay, you've been here before and you just came from these people.
Yeah.
And he's reminding me of the wedding invitation from Next Generation.
Oh, no, I don't. Which wedding invitation?
Oh, when Diana was betrothed and they transported this box up. It had a face on it.
Oh.
And it's
Okay, yeah.
open up, and then it started yelling at them about how glorious today was. So they were going to get married, and then it opened up and jewels fell out.
Oh, wow.
Her mom shows up.
Of course. Of course. Luoxana. Yep. So Drall talks to them about they could use the great machine, to find information about how to contact the first ones. And he's like, hey, you should come down here in about 4 hours. Then trouble appears. This is when we start to get our foil for the episode. Zach greets Julie Musante, which is a really fun name. She's from the Ministry of Peace. And she is extremely entitled, presumptuous, and rude to Zach. And Zach is just like not having any of it. While that's going on, we get a little scene with Jakar and Delenn, and Jakar is basically saying like, hey, y'all up to something, and I think I know what y'all up to, but y'all should include me. And Delenn is just completely like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, I've heard a word. It's called the Rangers. He puts together that there has to be some sort of Minbari human alliance. And he's like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. So this is kind of exploring what I was talking about. Jakar is powerless. And the only thing he has are his connections and his resources, which are greatly reduced since the Narn Centauri War. But it leads him directly to Delenn, who is the, de facto leader of the War Council, save for Sheridan. It's really Delenn. I don't know.
This made me feel bad, because I know that Delenn is definitely working and helping Jakar, but he's in the dark about it. He doesn't know that they are helping and that she had to kind of curb him like that. I found it difficult to witness. And then for Jakar to have to speak to her kind of with the same kind of salt that he would use with Londo, like when he didn't get the answer that he wanted, he had to have been like, well, I'm gonna do this if you don't. And I'm like, shit, he shouldn't have to do that. But he's just in a really difficult position, and it sucks really bad.
Jakar has more information than everybody else, but nobody believes Jakar.
Nope. There's also the War Council's trying to keep the knowledge of the shadows out of the public, because Jakar most likely would be like, look, we knew that the ancient enemy was here. They helped the Centauri. They're taking over the humans. They're fucking everybody up. Everybody listen to me. It's kind of a case of he's a little too early,
Yeah. And like you said, he's been yelling it on his soapbox. And not to mention his people have a whole holy text on it. Like bringing them into it would be advertising, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And because he's also in a desperate situation. His people are occupied now. They're colonized. And of course, he's going to try to do everything to get help. They're doing their best to dismiss him so the secret can stay under wraps. But that's the thing about the power. As much as the Babylon 5 crew are against the Shadows and Earth government, they are also behaving in a way that can harm people because they're trying to protect their own power. And it provides an interesting dynamic and an interesting dilemma, because if you are the champions of freedom and peace, you may find yourself in a situation where you have to behave like this, where you're keeping information secret, and it's not going to feel good. It's going to alienate people.
Yeah.
I'm going to let that hang out there for a little bit because there are going to be some things that come to light later in the series. So just know that this is what's going on. There is a mirror on the face of the powers that are in play. And there are some horrible things that people do to keep secrets. So after that, we see that Sheridan is meeting with Julie Masante. And I thought this was pretty interesting. She is criticizing Sheridan's office, which, I mean, I criticized it too. It looked like he put the office together off of like a discount website. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like that IKEA or that, the IKEA catalog that the narrator in Fight Club was using.
Minimalism.
Yeah, it's minimalist.
I got my rewards up here and I got a desk. What else do I need?
Right. And she's criticizing him because he's not more human centric. I use the term nationalistic because that's really what she's trying to say. Like, how
right. I mean,
yeah.
When she said human centric, I'm like, there's a human running this office. How much more human centric?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm not trying to be a Mabari. I'm just me.
Yeah. And she's all like, look, I came here to help you. You need a political advisor. That's me. And he's all like, I'm not sharing my authority with a civilian. And she's like, your authority comes from a government that champions civilian oversight. Ta-da, I'm here. I am the civilian to show oversight. And I'm also here to help you.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what's going on. She's there to put a collar on him because he's been doing some stuff that EarthGov doesn't like. And what she does, she insists that he goes to dinner with her to debrief her on everything that's been going on the station. And Sheridan is like, I guess I gotta go. All the plans to go down to Epsilon 3 are put on hold. Sheridan understands this, so he's like, it would be a bad look if I just disappeared, especially with this person. So he tells Ivanova, like, look, I won't be able to go, so you do the mission without me. You're gonna be okay. We'll just keep tabs on everything.
Very good delegation, but he clearly ain't a player because like it would be so easy to like come up with an excuse or a reason to having to be doing something that is not on my work schedule. And like, hello, bitch, I have a life and you don't get to tell me just because you see 5 minutes available in my schedule that you can put yourself in it. Where they do that?
That's the thing about fascism, though. They making sure that everything is regimented, and she is sliding herself right into those plans.
Was kind of off by him just being like, oh, I can't say I have anything personal because I'm the captain. Like, yeah, I wouldn't put my personal stuff on the thing. If I was going to eat at Garibaldi's house, I wouldn't put that on my schedule. There is a personal on the schedule. Right.
You know what? Franklin was not present at all in this episode.
But I also kind of thought that, like, he's leaving the planet. So she might, I mean, not the planet. He's leaving the station. So she would notice that.
Yeah.
If it was a secret meeting in the station, he might be able to get away with it. But you got to get on a ship. And that's kind of noticeable.
Also, it don't matter.
No matter where he goes.
And that's your business. And that's what it is. I said what I said.
Well, also, you got to think this is the exact same thing kind of happened a couple episodes ago where the crew left the station to quote unquote escort a Minbari diplomatic ship and then run back just in time for like the investigator to be like, oh, we're done with our investigation now. And also Julie is keeping a tighter eye on Sheridan because remember, she's trying to slide herself into his plans. She's trying to slide in. You know what I'm saying?
What she was trying to get him to do.
Ivanova goes to the planet and is confronted by Drall. Drall is all like, where the fuck is Sheridan? And she's like, surprise. there's a lot more that goes on there, but she like amusingly struggles to explain, and he's just like, you know what, that's kind of funny. And he shows her like, okay, so here's the machine. We're gonna look through this. During the dinner, now this is the part that I'm excited to discuss because their conversation, especially what comes from Julie, is very interesting. It's something that we should pay attention to. So during this dinner, Sheridan is giving Julie an update as far as like their status with the non-aligned worlds, considering the Centauri Nanaran world and how the Centauri fired on them in the peace treaty and all that stuff. And Julia's like, look, she says, Earth would never align itself with a warmongering government.
But they did sign a treaty with the... And she's like, see, so they couldn't be warmongering.
Right. Yeah, there we go. Yep. And then she explains, like, look, I know you got concerns, but you got to say them in a way that doesn't bother our leaders at home. And then she's like, okay, so what else? What else has been going on? Like the biggest thing the largest thing that Sheridan was concerned with, she just kind of brushes it off, and he's just like, all right, that's a little weird. She's like, okay, so what other things have been going on? And Sheridan's like, we've been having a little bit of a problem with lurkers here. And she's like, lurkers? What do you mean? Oh, they're like the homeless. She goes, stop. Earth doesn't have homeless. This is where we start to see her spin on things. So Earth doesn't have homeless. Anybody that wants a job can have one. And if a person doesn't want a job, they are either lazy or criminal or they're crazy.
And this is where Sunday was getting really confused because all of that didn't come out immediately. And I'm like, hold on, is she for real? Because not a lot is happening in this show from the perspective of like Earth. And so it's set all in the future. And I'm like, oh shit, did they resolve poverty?
Remember we said we rewrote the dictionary.
Yep.
And the scary part is she said that we are starting to weed out the mentally ill as children. So these people are just being doomed from the start. They're not given anything that they need in order to be successful. But also, what is she defining as success now that they rewrote the dictionary? Is success mindlessly becoming what's like to the other guy who just listens because they told him to?
Right.
Or else.
Mm-hmm. Listening to this conversation, we recognize that this is one of those steps towards the fascist or authoritarian government. So they are controlling the narrative, changing definitions, and making those who criticize the government and criticize the leaders out to be enemies. She insists that anyone that discusses societal flaws with the leaders are anarchists and troublemakers, and then they will be punished.
For sedition.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this reminds me of the fight with Mars. Like, it was easier for them to just treat Mars like they're just a working force. And Mars revolted. And the way she, like, kind of said Mars as though it was a slur.
Oh, yeah.
And nicked it. It kind of, like, parallels that. That's why they wanted independence from Earth, so they couldn't treat them like that.
Yeah, it puts some things in context. Because remember, Garibaldi worked on Mars. Captain Sinclair was from Mars. And she describes them as Marsies. When Sheridan asks, like, what about prejudice? And she's like, we don't have that. Well, you know, except for the Marsies. But they need to stop opposing Earth so we can stop fighting them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like that othering that you mentioned as far as fascist regimes. There's always a centering on othering others while you are creating like ideological and political purity. There's the racial purity, which now that I'm saying it, this kind of highlights that. Like Martians are probably looked at as a different race from Earthborn people now. If you think,
yeah, physiologically,
a Martian is a human just born on Mars. That's wild.
Even though, ironically, and a lot of people know this, the actual definition of human is from Earth. It means from Earth.
It means from
So-
Earth, but it means like from the dirt, like human.
Right. This while you were explaining how the fascism works exactly in this situation and comparing it to like the racial fascism, it has a lot of parallels with a cult. Like,
Oh yeah,
where
absolutely.
with it being a political thing instead of a spiritual thing.
Yes.
No, those are the two differences.
And the thing is, fascism will incorporate spiritual things or religious things.
Yeah.
The Mussolini regime, I think they were kind of like against religion and the church at the time, but the Nazis, they were endorsed by the Catholic Church, and they were trying to promote like a type of national mythicism with first of all, they had the concept of the Aryan race and what they thought were like the perfect beings, and then they developed a myth where that came from and where like the white race or white Germans came from. And then the contrast was they othered people in the origins of Italian fascism. They didn't other Jews, but the Nazis definitely did. And that wasn't a new thing. Like for for hundreds of years, Europeans just hated Jewish people. And the Nazis were like, oh, we have a way to mythicize our hatred towards them and to moralize it too. The end of it was not just the massacre and genociding of Jewish people, but also the moralizing of taking those actions. And all of that, you want to know where they learned how to do all of that? It didn't come out of nowhere.
No, none of it did, but they just arranged it for what they wanted.
Yeah, they were copying America.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah. They're like, ooh, what the Americans are doing, let us do that here.
Yeah, and that's the same thing, like I said earlier, with the security guards' insecurities.
Yeah.
Like, Europe already had insecurities when it came to Jews, and they just decided to take advantage of that and take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And give them a sense of power based on that insecurity. Right? As what is his name? The guy that works for Garibaldi. Zach. Yeah. I don't know why I can't remember that name. But
he's so forgettable.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel like he has any power in these things. Like, all things just keep changing and I gotta remember it. My jacket don't even fit right.
Yeah.
Like, they gave him a place where they forced him into that authority, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, so now I have power. And that's how people work. We do need to have a sense of power. And having a sense of power over yourself is how you can not let other people tell you where your sense of power is. That's where that phrase, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah. And just to kind of solidify some things, the authoritarian and the fascist government, what they will do is they will cause chaos first. There's always a shakeup. So destabilizing things is going to be the first big thing. And then installing a strong stabilizer, or the image of a strong stabilizer. That's where President Clark comes in. But then you keep the subordinates, like people who are in the military, people who are used to structure. You highly regiment them to where they have no choice but to do exactly what you say. And then you exert that power through those people, which that's what Zach is. He's the eyes and ears of Night Watch, which essentially is an arm of the authoritarian government to watch and keep eyes on things. They already expelled shopkeepers for having disloyal thoughts or something like that, rhetoric. And it's like, if you're not loyal to us, we will get rid of you. And how are we going to get rid of you? We're going to put snitches on every corner. And I'm sorry, that's what Zach is. He's a snitch.
Is Zach also a brown shirt?
Ooh. You know what? We will talk about that in a few episodes because I think that comes up. Honestly, this is the way I look at Zach. I think Zach is kind of like a centrist liberal. He kind of doesn't, he's apolitical. He doesn't really care about much other than himself. And when worse comes to worse, he'll just go with the flow. And he'll be irritated with it, but there's going to come a time where he has to put his mind to it, like really think about what he's doing to do the right thing. But what's happening is the right thing is being obscured from him.
Hey everybody, this is Legendary Black Lion from the future. We had an audio mistake that erased a middle portion of this episode. We were basically wrapping up our discussion about Zach being drawn into Night Watch, and then we started talking about Ivanova using the Great Machine, reaching out with her mind and contacting one of the Great Ones. Her journey then leads her to seeing what happened when President Clark orchestrated the assassination of President Santiago. So we're going to pick up right here, and hopefully it doesn't ruin your enjoyment. Thanks.
So I was making a joke about how Ivanova's mind traveling through space looks like the transwarp tunnels in Voyager. We'll deal with that later. So she follows the silvery blue lines to Sigma 957, and she encounters the ominous presence of the first ones, and she's struggling against their pull, and Drall is trying to tell her, like, no, you need to come back. And she's like, really having trouble with it. But he's like, I can't unplug you, otherwise I kill you. But she gets pulled into the past. And this is where she witnesses the assassination plot by Clark, saying that he's been wishing Santiago dead for the longest. And there's another voice that you can hear in this vision. And that voice is none other our good friend, Mr. Morden. So Morden and the Shadows were behind the destruction of Earth Force One and the assassination of President Santiago. It was
more obvious now.
Yeah, so much more obvious.
Because it was kind of obvious at first, but because we saw behind the scenes of him get rescued.
And Ivanova's like, oh my God, this is what we need. So they pull her out, and Drall is like, a normal human mind should not have been able to do that. And of course, Ivanova's God, but you know, she's also a telepath. So there's something about her. Then we have the after dinner with Julie, Masante, and Sheridan, which is Masante returns to Sheridan's quarters because conveniently she's been locked out of hers. And so he's like, okay, come on in, whatever, yada, yada. She attempts to seduce him. She like slips into another room, and then she comes out completely 100% bucket naked and ready to serve her country. I'm sorry, serve her planet? How do you say that?
Serve her government.
Yeah. And Sheridan is really about to turn her down, like, you know, crush her little heart. But then Ivanova's holographic image appears, and he's like, oh no. This could be bad. So he grabs Julie so close and he kisses her so she doesn't look back at Ivanova, and Ivanova's like, oh shit. And she disappears. And then when they finally get to talk, because Sheridan slides into the other room, she's like, here's the deal. We know where the first ones are, but we need to go now to meet them because we may not have this opportunity ever again. He tells her he won't be able to leave because Masante is watching. You need to go, Ivanova. Once again, he's sending Ivanova. In the meantime, he returns back to Julie, and he's like, oh, wow, it's really cold in here, because he's talking about, I guess, her nipples are perking up in his room. I don't know. And I don't know how he did it, but he was able to reject her and get out of that situation.
He seemed freaked out. He's a very professional guy. You don't come at him unprofessionally.
He's he's professional and he's principled.
She comes from a place where sex sells, and no, real man is gonna turn down a naked woman. And she just hasn't run into many demisexuals out here because, all right, little baby, but that's gonna be a no for a principled man.
In the meantime, Jakar is confronting Garibaldi about Ivanova's whereabouts. Basically, Jakar is all over these people. He's like, something's up. I know there's been a lot of last minute meetings. Ivanova's not around, and I'm going to find out. Garibaldi, once again, is like, I can't, there's nothing to tell. Oh, geez, I don't know. Jakar's like, look, I know something's going on. I just wish you could tell me so I could help. And Garibaldi's like, I don't see how you could. Like, which is a lack of foresight on his part. Also, Garibaldi's not telling anybody what Jakar's doing. Notice.
Yeah. But Jakar's doing what he always does.
And everybody's blowing him off too.
Mm-hmm.
But because he's not in he's not in security, he has no authority. They think that they could just push him aside. But we'll find out later the whole thing with Jakar, because he's not having it. So the next morning, Zach, he meets up with an irate Musante. She's like, look, I don't know what's up with Sheridan, but man, he knows how to say no. And Zach takes that moment to try to flirt with Musante, as she's also like giving Zach compliments. But then once he flirts with her, she insults him like, do you know your suit doesn't fit right? And he's, she has to just like throw him down. Yeah. And she explains like, look, you got obligations. We're going to be doing a night watch meeting here pretty soon, and I expect you to be there. I didn't notice it until the second time I saw it. As they're leaving, Garibaldi's back there watching. So Garibaldi is like, oh, this little snitch. He's over there ratting us out right now.
I see that, but that explains why Garibaldi was acting to the way he was with Zach later. Yes.
We get to see Ivanova on the White Star on their way to Sigma 957. They're talking about Marcus. Marcus invites himself. He's going as the translator. And just kind of pay attention to the way Marcus and Ivanova are interacting throughout the series. She does not like this dude at all, and he does not care.
He recognizes a god when he sees one, and he's trying to treat her accordingly.
Wow. Yeah. At the Night Watch meeting, Musante announces like new powers and restrictions of freedom of speech and association, justifying them as necessary during the crisis. In other words, she's manufacturing a crisis on behalf of Earth Force, and that people have to be ideologically pure, and there will be immediate fines and penalties. And this is when Zach, for once in his life, he stands up and is like, security is supposed to act in accordance to the rules of due process. And Mazante just throws him down like, look, yeah, we're going to suspend due process because we need to ensure that people are going to be loyal to Earth's safety and ideological purity. Certain individuals will be purged. There will be abridgments of protections of speech. And it's just, she's stoking the fire of suspicion, because all of this stuff that she said to them it was nothing close to what she said to Sheridan.
And she's constantly reminding them of the difference between like the civilians and the military. It's like, yeah, that's okay for the civilians, but we in the military, we like follow different kinds of rules in your due process. We don't give a fuck about that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. She said that going against the ideological is different than criminal law.
Yes.
And she's like, oh, no, that's for criminal law. That's not for ideals.
Right.
So if I hurt someone, I can go through due process, but I think differently. Nah, y'all gonna take me no matter what.
And that's what the purges are for. There is the slide, and nobody is questioning him except for Zach, which, man, poor Zach. He is not equipped at all to be able to stand up to this. He's been primed to accept it, and we will see the way some of those thoughts leak into his brain. Yeah. So aboard the White Star, Ivanova and Marcus are sitting there just waiting because they're trying to find the first ones. And Marcus, he's attempting to have a chat with her. He's annoying her because she don't care. But also, the thing that he does is he tries to get close and personal with her. He's asking her about, like, how does she take care of herself? And she's just like, boy, shut up. And as that's going on, a giant black ship ringing the blue lights arrives through a white lightning gate. And this thing is imposing. It's so much bigger than the White Star. And when they finally encounter what is, I guess, one of the old ones, it's a giant face of a wooden mask with blazing eyes. Probably one of the worst visual effects on the show.
It was given very much The Watcher. That's what I thought of when I saw it.
I was thinking Legends of the Hidden Temple. He looked like
Yep.
Olmec.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
It also, like, some religions have gods with multiple heads, and that thing had faces on the side of it too.
Okay. Ooh, okay. It kind of goes into some of the myths that might be reflected in Earth's history on the show.
It could. It also could be that a lot of the special effects on these things just copy things that are foreign to us from other cultures.
True. Yeah.
I mean, both of them are equal. Right?
She requests their help to fight the shadows, but at the mention of the Vorlons, the first ones are pretty much like, nah, fuck y'all. And it refuses to respond in English or Minbari. And this is where Marcus is like, oh, well, they understand our language. They just won't speak it. Who knew that they were French? And I know that joke, but I also started thinking like French Canadian also. It must be a French thing to be like, I can understand you. I'm just not going to talk to you. It's like, yeah. Why do you have to be the stuck up ones in the world when nobody likes you?
That's the only one why nobody likes.
Anyway. While that's going on, Sheridan is showing Garibaldi the recording that Ivanova gave him. And they're having a discussion of like, okay, this is exactly what we've been looking for. We have the proof. And Garibaldi is like, we can't release it ourselves. There's the question of authenticity. Anybody could fake this. Sheridan's like, I'm going to send this to General Haig. And even if you think the authenticity could be questioned, this is going to be sent on a channel that has the proper ID codes to make sure that everybody knows that this is legit, because it's coming from, I think the recording itself is looking at President Clark's transmissions.
It has the ID from the transmissions of whatever their version of Air Force One is.
Yeah.
It's putting one. Look.
Yeah. And you know, Garibaldi is all skeptical of it, which I actually kind of agree with Garibaldi on this. It's like, how, like, when they showed the first shadow ship, that's when they were like, oh, well, this could be fake or this isn't real. And then they did the investigation. They dismissed it. The same thing can happen to this, but I don't know. We'll find out. Back on the White Star, the mask reappears and it says a single word, which is Zog, which I love. 90s sci-fi. Honestly, 20th century sci-fi's thought of what alien language would sound like. It's just
the letters that we don't.
Or it uses the sounds that we do, but in a weird way. I don't know. And she's like,
it seems like there's not a lot of words that start with Z. So let's make up words that start with Z because we don't use a lot, or we don't already Z.
Right.
Or Q or X or Y.
Right.
Well, we use Q. But like if you look at a dictionary or back in the day, the encyclopedias,
those are the smaller
ones. Like all the letters that got put into one encyclopedia book, those are the letters that they use for alien languages.
Yeah. And because of that rejection, this is where Ivanova turns into God mode and start roasting. She's like, "Oh, you know what? You know what the Vorlon said to me? They said that y'all was a bunch of bitches, and we had to carry y'all the last stop."
Wow. Taught their masculinity. That's the way to go.
Yeah, that exactly. And this is where you were saying that that Ivanova was being manipulative, right? And basically, she provoked them because they don't like the Vorlons, and they're like, "Okay, we'll see what the Vorlons got to say. Who carried who in a war? Okay, all you got to do is show up to this one spot and say our name. We'll show up. We gonna show you who's who. We gonna show you what's up in this galaxy." And so our war council has the aid of the first of the first ones. And now we're starting to feel a little bit of hope. Like the Vorlons who may not be willing, maybe they're not strong enough to do anything, aren't there. But now we have this godlike creature that will be there when we ask for help.
I think it paralleled what's going on the station with Earth Force. Like you had to have a little bit of hope with the dystopia that's on its way. Because it was kind of heavy. Like, them like, oh, we're going to arrest you for thinking wrong. That's really heavy. Yeah. And then counteract that with, oh, these ancient civilizations that don't have to care about us because they are so powerful. We can call them? Yay!
Yeah, oh, right. We can get help. I can bring a friend. In Garibaldi's office, security staff is watching the news reports revealing the evidence implicating Clark in Santiago's assassination. And we find out later that Musante is pissed about this. She's like, there is no way anyone needs to accuse our president and chief. Garibaldi informs them that Musante has been recalled to Earth to address the crisis and advise them to tell people that they're waiting for the truth. In other words, it's like, okay, we know what the allegations are, but you just gotta wait until after our investigation. After the staff leaves, Garibaldi talks to Zach about Night Watch. Zach insists that he didn't divulge any information to Musante, and it is accusatory. We got these two people who, I guess you could say, are on the same team, but Garibaldi, being Garibaldi, rubs everybody the wrong way. And the Garibaldi says, like, look, after what happened to me, I thought it was going to be a long time before I trusted anyone. I thought I could trust you. And he's referring to seeing Zach over there chopping it up with Musante.
Zach was telling Garibaldi, you don't trust me because I don't know everything that you know. Little does he know, nobody knows everything that Garibaldi knows. Garibaldi basically didn't have nothing back to say because he ain't no player neither. He couldn't come up with a simple excuse to like, yo, that's a code that only the top level of security are using. So yeah, let's get back to that need to know basis. That's one of those things you didn't need to know.
Right. And
he's always keeping information from people. He should know how to keep information from people.
Right. And this is where Zach is like, people who got secrets, people keeping secrets have something to hide. You got something to hide, Chief? That's what I thought. Or whatever. And this is kind of like the end of their relationship, because Zach is like, look, I know you're my boss and everything, but I think from now on you shouldn't talk to me. I think we both would be happier. I'm like, Zach, you're never going to be happy because you're a dumbass. But okay. I get it.
I'm not your friend no more.
Ivanova informs Sheridan of the old ones from Sigma 957, how they'll help when they call. Zach escorts Musante to the docking area, and she's like, we're going to get to the bottom of who is accusing our dear Lord President. And this is where Zach is like, hey, do you know what a Code 7R is? And she's like, I ain't never heard of that. And he's like, well, I know there's a bunch of regulations and stuff has been changing, but I just wanted to know what that is. She's like, I don't know. What the fuck? What are you talking about? And it shows further suspicion from Zach. He's starting to ask questions, which, I mean, is putting people in jeopardy.
The time you want to, use your brain is going to negatively impact the people that are actually like on your side. What a dumbass.
Yeah, and what's her? I don't want to call her Gloria. What's her name?
Julia.
Okay, she associated the power that she's giving him with his insecurities. So it's like, if you don't want to be insecure about this, you can use this power over it, and that's what insecure people do. They'll be like, well, you're not this, you're not that, and you're going to be something if you do what I tell you to.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of people swindle people. That's most of the self-help people, that's what they knew. They're like, oh, those are your insecurity. If you keep listening to me and paying into my systems, you'll get better. And people will be fans of these people for 20 years, giving them money for 20 years and never fixing their situation. Like, just go to therapy.
Right. What they, again, is like they're offering a solution to a problem that they created themselves.
Uh-huh.
And then the measure of security comes at the cost of loyalty. And that is what happened. That's what's happening. And Zach proudly wears that stupid night watch band, and it's just it's disappointing, especially knowing what some of us who've watched the show know what's gonna happen later with night watch and all that stuff. Zach is honestly kind of the perfect type of character to fall for that stuff. So yeah, we'll revisit all of that in the future. As we're about to leave the show, Jakar wakes Garibaldi up in his quarters, and he hands him the Book of Jaquan. And Garibaldi's like, "What's this?" He goes, "It's the Book of Jaquan." And Garibaldi's like, "I can't read Narn." He's like, "Well, learn." And he turns and leaves. Which, honestly, of all of the characters, what anybody could have done to help anybody on the show, this is Jakar doing probably the most important thing ever on the show. And it goes off.
This just shows also and Ken. Their computer system can't just translate the book.
Well, true.
They ain't got there yet. Yeah, they ain't get there yet. They too busy fighting each other.
But also,
and
remember when Jakar was presenting the Book of Jaquan to that investigator? He said every stroke is copied from the original. The pictures, the words, everything was copied for over 1,000 years in its original language. It sounds very much Islam to me.
Mhm.
Kind of like, the precision that it takes to copy the manuscripts and make sure that it's in the original language and all that stuff. Translating it probably is not a good idea to Narns.
Well, translating our religious text has done nothing but harm people. So
Yes.
You're right.
There's translating and interpreting, and all of those are probably awful. I'm still curious. I'm still curious where they keep their marsupial pouches.
Oh my gosh.
So we've come to the end of this episode. We've seen kind of like the spreading influence of a totalitarian regime, implementing some of the principles and some of the tools of fascism, the distrust and suspicion that is happening between people who are supposed to be on the same side, and just like this wild card in Julia Musante, who's just throwing power around and throwing some other things around to get her way.
Oh, is that what they're calling it nowadays?
Jesus. I'm not supposed to say that.
Mm.
She offered him the box. Did I use that right?
Yeah.
You sure did.
She was trying to use it right.
Ever heard? And if this gets cut out, I understand. But we were playing a game and the guy was losing, and he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go home and play with the box my kids came in."
Oh no. Oh no. Okay. All right.
It was shocking to hear someone so matter-of-factly speak in the direction of fascism, and it is equally troubling to think that there are Zach-like humans that, I mean, his character is based off of real people.
Billions of
And
people.
that they are not going to be, but that they are being manipulated into a regime that does not have humanity's best interest at heart.
A lot of people have these feelings right now that the government is going to start trying to control how people think and how they live their lives. There several different governments right now on Earth, which also makes me think it never really goes away. Sometimes maybe it's not as obvious for us. It doesn't affect us as much, but there's always someone out there who is always plenty of people out there so insecure about their situation that they think the only power they have is to be over somebody else. And no one thinks that the answer is self-esteem.
I do think that there are a lot of people on the right who are pointing out self-esteem and saying like, hey, we're going to offer you that self-esteem. We're going to offer you that power. And it's kind of interesting.
False self-esteem.
Yeah. It is interesting. But there's also, I remember like thinking about like the limits on free speech in the early 2000s and like the 2010s. They were talking about how free speech wasn't a good thing. And people shouldn't have free speech for a while. And they were talking about changing the Constitution. This is really just pundits, though. Changing the Constitution so people can't just speak freely. And then during the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, they were talking about how you shouldn't talk bad about the president and how you need to support him. And you're disloyal and you're not a patriot if you say anything. And all of it just comes around. But it's like today what they do is the other thing that Julia was saying, which is they just redefine things. They redefine what it means to be a patriot. They redefine what it means to criticize the government. They redefine what it means to be a real American. And people are in a destabilized state. And the authorities from that side are going to swoop in and offer stability. And it's something that we know it's happening, but a lot of people are going to let it happen because they're also in desperate situations.
Yeah. I think Josh Johnson said it really well. He says everything well. Trump can say something and it'll be like completely wrong. But like you said, it gets redefined and he doesn't even have to redefine it. His fans redefine it. And he's like, oh no, that's not what he meant. Where he clearly meant that.
Yeah. And there's something that has not been touched on in this series at all, which is what is the opposing political structure? I guess we might know because Santiago was kind of like, quote unquote, on the liberal side. And then that one senator was kind of liberal-ish. But their version of liberalism is to like be powerless, honestly, and to do nothing. I think we'll stop there without getting on a political soapbox. There will be a lot of time for that later, but I just wanted to point that out. All right, let's get out of here. Thank y'all for joining us for this edition of Voices in Hyperspace. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. Like, share, follow, continue the conversation on our Facebook. I'm Legendary Black Lion. You can catch me on Instagram, and I have recently joined Blue Sky to see what that's all about. So look me up at Legendary Black Lion.
I'm Mel Asylum. You can find me at melsrebellion.com. I have also joined Blue Sky. Haha.
Wow. Okay.
You can find most of my socials with Mel's Rebellion or Mel Asylum.
Hey y'all, this is Sunday. I have not joined Blue Sky. You can find me at a poker table. Good night.
All right. Good night. Bye.